Alright guys, so now I'm going to explain part 2 that'll get us one step closer to figuring out where you should purchase a home. Now I'm going to determine how high the water goes when it floods in the Grand Prairie on a 100-year flood zone. To do that, I'm going to create a graph, and I'm going to compare the discharge as the x-axis to the gauge as the y. We've already done this before, so it's pretty easy. I'm simply going to go to my spreadsheet. I'm going to move this down here momentarily out of the way. I need discharge left for my x-axis. I have that, but now my right axis I need the gauge. That's what it just told me. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to pull it down, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to bring it up to the next column. I'm going to paste it in. So now I have my x-axis on the left, y-axis on the right. So now I'm simply going to take them, I'm going to highlight both columns to create my graph. Again, Excel assumes the guy on the left is the one you want for your x. Do you remember what to do now? Now I'm going to come over to Insert. I'm going to go to Charts to create a scatter plot. And there's my scatter plot graph. Now that I have it, I'm going to come back to my directions. It says, now use your estimate of the discharge of 10 and 100 years. I'm not giving you the answer for this. You already wrote it down. You're supposed to use your previous graph for this. That's the numbers you put here. So I'm going to pretend momentarily for my 10-year graph that I got 20,000 feet. So now I'm going to estimate the gauge. Again, this is an assumption. I'm pretending this is not the actual answer. So I think it's 20,000. So I want to see what the gauge would be. But that's kind of hard for my eyes to read. So I'm going to right-click and put Add a Trend Line. We did this before. I'm going to make sure it's logarithmic. At 20,000, I'm saying I think the gauge is about 26, 27. That's how high the water is going to go in the stream. If you remember how that looked, that was like my original one that I showed you here. I think it's going to go up 26 or 27. So on my actual worksheet, down here it says, what is the gauge height for 10? I'm pretending I think it's 26, 27. You need to actually look at your data. You're going to do the exact same thing for the 100-year flood. The only difference is now you're looking at the 100-year mark. Whatever you thought the 100-year mark was from this previous answer, you're now simply going to link it to figure out what the gauge height would be. So let's say you thought it was 50,000. Then I would say about 35, whatever you thought it was. Okay, now that I've done that, it says in this case, the gauge height is in the height that's measured at the river height above the 420-foot contour interval. This is near Grand Prairie in the Irving Quad. You have these same topographic maps in Schoology and on Canvas, but let me show you how that looks. So again, where did they measure the water? At the gauging station at the north side of the river at 420 foot. So I'm going to take a look at that. So I'm on the north side of the river. If I come down to the bottom, it tells me my contour interval is 10. So I'm going to come up. Here's the river. I have a marker here of 450. So if I follow it around, I have 450 is this line, which would mean coming down, that's going to be 440, 430, 420. So if I follow this around, they probably took the water level somewhere here with the river, or maybe somewhere over here. That's where they figured out how high the water goes. Again, how high does the water go? I'm using a gauge that looks like this. So that's the map I'm looking at. Looking at that map, I'm going to determine at what elevation the flood would crest. Where is it going to go over? By adding the gauge for the flood to 420. This is not hard. You're simply going to put whatever you just wrote down here, the gauge height for 10 feet, add it to 420. Remember, I got that by simply looking at this graph. Whatever you thought 10-year was, that's what I'm adding to 420, the elevation line. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the 100-year. So based on that gauge height, now it gives me an elevation of how high the water is going to go at 10 and 100 years. When you have that information, you're going to write it down here. Make sure you understand the difference. The gauge height for the 10 and 100 was simply found on that graph. You simply linked it up from your previous answer that you had here. The elevation is found by taking that number plus the 420, and then this number plus the 420. And that concludes your short tutorial on part 2.